Now we'll start with the session. The session is on how do we manage our finances in these uncertain times. And to highlight some of the action points, I have taken the top 10 investment mistakes that we have seen people committing over a long period of time. And we'll go through these topics one by one. So before we start, I'll just briefly tell you what goes on every couple of years. So every 5 to 10 years, there is a major crisis where the share market goes down, and every 2 3 years there's a correction of around 15 20%, which keeps happening. But whenever that happens, we always, people tell that past performance cannot be used to estimate results, but still we have to learn from the past, especially the past mistakes. And whenever there is a crisis, there is an element of surprise. And each time, even after so many analysts and so many investment managers are always managing this, managing trillions of dollars, they still get fooled, and there is something which is surprising us. And the net result or the everything, every time we just come to know that this time it's different, so we could not manage that risk. What happened this time? Who predicted that there will be a crisis like this? Actually, no one, and not even who, which is WHO. Actually, one of the reasons why all of us kind of got fooled, because of the data that we got from China. We really can't trust that data, and also the way WHO kind of managed it. Otherwise, we could have been more careful, and this crisis, maybe we could have managed it much better. So to give you an understanding of how the COVID-19 virus is affecting different industries, this is a chart which I have taken from CRISIL's report, and it really gives us a good idea of what is going on in the Indian context. If you see the x-axis, the horizontal x-axis, basically showing us the revenue impact. Wherever it is high, it means that these companies are really losing revenue during this crisis. And the sectoral resilience is basically related to their balance sheet strength, which is related to the amount of debt that these companies, companies in these sectors have. So if you see the uh, low and high resilience, that means less, problematic, and low revenue impact. So most of the pharmaceutical companies, agrochemicals, etc., IT is in that quadrant. However, on the extreme side, there is, residential and commercial real be really affected very badly. Airlines, which will be really affected, badly. So this kind of captures what is going on in this, in the industry at different sector levels. And why most of us could not estimate the crisis? It actually comes from the theory that it's very difficult for the human mind to factor exponential growth. Most of us, when we think about any calculation, it is a linear that we assume. So even for this coronavirus case, when the numbers were 2468, or in that, like 248, so it might be growing exponentially. We will think that the actual difference is not that much in number terms. And then when that exponential growth kicks in, there is a huge surprise factor. And this is the just what we saw with the technology disruptions, where something, suddenly comes up. Initially it's very small, and then it disrupts the entire industry. Or it can be the same thing even with your investments, where the power of compounding is something which is very difficult to understand initially, but when it kicks, or negative, depends on how well it is, compounding. So this is also a very interesting and important concept, that how do we easily understand exponential growth. Idea of how the history has been for Indian share markets. This is a graph which gives 1, 3, 5, 10, and 15-year rolling returns. What it means is that if I invest 100 rupees and over a period of time, in the first year, that 100 could have been, there might be a loss of minus 56.07% or a gain of 262.7%. So return has that sort of volatility. From, if it is really a good market, it up to 62.7%, or it's almost close to 35-40% right now from the peak. So it can also further have some downside risk. But over a period of time, you will see that that volatility is coming down. At the 3-year mark, on considering any 3-year period, rolling any 3-year period, the variance is from 82.5 to minus 18.52. Then over a 10-year period, it is minus 2.81 and 35. And over a 15-year period is almost 5. So over a long period of time, like a 15-year period, generally you will not have a negative return. But this also shows that it is not necessary that all long-term investments will give very high. That's a general theory which we see in many different ads, or when people are selling mutual funds, etc., that there will be a 15% return. It's not necessary. It depends on how you have managed your investments and how the market has been, and your allocation, etc. So there are a number of factors, but there is no guarantee that long-term investments returns will be good. Also, one thing which is clear, that when you hold, then the negative chances of negative return goes down significantly. Generally, when I'm doing these workshops at physical setup, then it's easy to interact with people and it's easy to get their feedback. However, I have a online link also. If some of you are interested, I'm just putting it up in the chat. Maybe if you are interested, you can interact in that. That way I can get some feedback from the audience. So here the question is that there is a exercise where either you can participate in that exercise, you can that I don't want to participate in that exercise. And the exercise is very simple, that you will decide on tossing a coin whether it's heads or tails. If you participate and if you if you win, then you will get rupees 40,000. However, if you lose, if the prediction is wrong, then you lose 20. Now, if you decide you don't want to participate at all, will not play the game, then you surely lose rupees 10,000. So chances are that I participate, take a bet. Correct. I have a 4 times 40,000 kind of a return. If prediction, then I lose. If I don't participate at all, 10,000. Generally, now I cannot actually interact with all the audience, but generally what I have seen is 80-90% people in the audience, they decide to actually participate, and nobody really wants to without trying. Though if you try and if you take the bet, then there is a higher loss probability of 20,000 compared to the 10,000. But still people do want to take the bet and go for the 40,000. Hello? Yeah. So why I am describing this case is because many times people say that I don't want to take any risk and I want to put all my money in fixed deposit because it's considered safe. However, the concept here is that it is not really safe in the long run, because there is something called inflation risk. And obviously, I'm not going into the credit risk of banks, though we have Bank, PMC Bank, etc. That's a separate kind of a issue. Assuming there is no credit risk, then nowadays the rate cut, we are seeing an average 1-year FD interest rate is around 5.5%. And if somebody is in the 30% tax bracket, then after tax he'll only make 3.85%. Assuming inflation, 6% or more, because there's a headline inflation number, but we know how much our rent goes up, how much healthcare costs go up, how much education cost goes up in India, and sometimes it is actually 10% also. But let's say, then post-tax inflation adjusted return is minus 2.15%, which is the sure loss case. So, going back to the earlier slide, this is the case you do not participate and there is a sure loss. And why it will become important over a period of time, especially for youngsters who will be starting their careers now, and in 30 years they'll be retiring. Interest rate trajectory seems that it will keep going down for in the long term, as it has happened in US, Europe, etc. And if it continues in India as well, then the interest in will be very low. Plus, in our generation, most people don't have a pension. The PF, that will be one some payment, but it's not equal to the pension which comes every year. So that's actually not a good situation to be in when you are retired. In fact, if you see from 2010 onwards, the retirement income in India is almost half in the last 10 years. Because when people started in 2010, the interest rates were 9.5% for senior citizens. Now it has gone down and almost half. So for them, it's a huge cash in loss of cash inflow on a monthly basis. And long term inflation trend in India has been high, and even we are seeing that inflation is there, which is decreasing our purchasing power every year. So we need to definitely understand inflation and then design our investment portfolio in such a way that at least it grows more than inflation on a annual basis. So but then most people say there'll be risk, and especially in times like this when markets have gone down significantly everywhere, there is a lot of uncertainty. These are also the periods where you see a lot of opportunity. So risk components, one is the danger and the negativity, but also the positive aspect is that this is the period when we will have more opportunities as well. And it's actually very difficult sometimes to estimate true risk. When everything is going well, people are very bullish about the markets, people are very bullish about investment, then at that time their perception of risk is also lower. And when in these times of crisis, risk perceptions increase. But actually, this is probably less riskier, because if something was costing 100 rupees and we were very happy to invest at that time, now when it's at 70, it's actually less risky now compared to when it was at 100. But people will stop investing and people will get more cautious now. So that's how we are actually not able to estimate true risk just from a mental calculation point of view. It assign probability. Even we would not have assigned a probability that India would be in a lockdown for such a long time. That's very difficult to assign such probabilities. So it's difficult to estimate risk. When you're designing your portfolio, the most important component is the many times when we are doing this, we get questions like which specific share or specific mutual fund should I invest in, and these are very specific questions. But that particular question is not so important, because that only affects 5% of my overall return. What matters and has the maximum contribution is the asset allocation, which is 90%, which means in which different types of instruments I have distributed my money. So it's something will be in fixed, something might be in gold, something might be in real estate, something might be in equity. But how I distribute is what is going to determine the level of wealth. That's really important. And the two tables which are there on the side, one is related to post bear market return. What we have seen in 2000 after the crisis, but after 3 and 5 years, the returns were quite good. In 2008, at the bottom situation was really bad, but after a year it had given really good return, and then after 3 and 5 years returns had gone up. So that is something where there is a probability that after a bear market returns can go up. However, the flip side or the risky part of it is that you know that it is actually a good time to invest even in the bear market. October 2008, when the market was already quite low at 9,788. There was one day when the market had gone 8.2%, but and people thought maybe that is the bottom, that is where the crisis ends and the money will keep going up. But within some time, market again went down 16%. Similarly, on 13th October, it went up 7.4%, but from that point till the bottom was minus. So it's very, very difficult to find the bottom of the market and trying to time the market. But in hindsight, even after the correction that we have now, anybody who had invested in those periods is still well off. I mean, he's having a good return. So there has to be a method where by which you stagger your investments over several months, but you should not lose this opportunity. Really low, and definitely this opportunity should be used in a staggered manner. So this is something which we have seen in number of cases where the investment portfolio is not and sometimes family members are not deciding it holistically, so the asset allocation is skewed towards one particular asset class. There are cases where somebody has probably purchased a flat or apartment for huge sum, and that is also under a loan. So almost the entire portfolio of that person is one real estate, which is not really the right kind of a investment portfolio. So then the asset allocation is very skewed towards one asset class. It has to be distributed so that the pie chart kind of looks uniform. During these periods, many times people also lose their patience and take a wrong decision to exit at the wrong time. Now, in almost all market cycles, we have seen this sort of a graph, and this is a graph which, like I personally follow for all my own investments as well, because this has been happening throughout history, and whether it was the 2008 crisis, even 2013, there was a problem in Indian markets. Even now, there is a period when there is excitement, exuberance, which was probably sometime last year. Then around January of this year, though we knew that the virus is there in the world, there could be some problem, there was a denial. Then by the beginning of February, mid of February, there was that there was this stock market sell-off which happened in March, and now we are kind of in the fears to desperation mode. A little bit of panic will also set if in case uh, the lockdown or the period of when this entire episode will end is not clear. Then there would be a little bit more of panic. So we are probably in the not really in the desperation stage, maybe still in the fear or desperation, but somewhere there is a little bit more room for the panic to set in, and then we will have this capitulation, and then again things would rise. So this is a graph which keeps happening every few, and the dynamic SIP concept which we typically use in management strategy is based on this particular philosophy, where if the market is overvalued, then we should invest less in share market, most in the fixed income side, and when the market is undervalued, opposite thing, which is buy low, sell high. But it's very easy to say, quite a difficult thing to implement. Automating it is the best strategy. So now this is this is almost similar to the last graph, but this basically says how the investors' emotions change over a period of time. And it is not only for share market; it happens in real estate, gold, every kind of market. where when everybody is initially a little uncertain, then they get a little interested because prices are going up, and there is a stage where everybody is buying. Like last time when the crisis happened uh, in 2008-9, at that time it was real estate where people kept buying properties because the price was going up and up. And then what happens is when the crisis starts, then people have to sometimes sell at the lowest point, and that's how they lose their money. So whenever you're investing, to try to analyze and understand which point in the cycle are we currently, and then accordingly you have to decide. So that's the like how do we decide when to invest and when do we decide to exit a particular asset class. However, we should not panic and sell at the wrong time. So this chart basically shows that though this is for the S&P 500, but because Indian markets kind of follow the US market in number of times, so more or less it will be similar for Sensex as well. That over a period of long period of time, if somebody is just sitting on cash, which is like deposits or something like that, then that return will be a linear, won't be that much. But compared to that, equity investments would more. However, there will be certain periods when market can drop 30% or more. And trying to perfectly time the market is not possible. Nobody knows that, how to time the market perfectly. So, I mean, it's better to keep staggering the investments and keep investing over a period of time rather than trying to time the market and try to enter at the. It's really very difficult. If you are interacting with that survey page, then it will be useful for us to get what they think when the market will bottom, what they think how the market will behave. So if you are listening to this, you can also go to that URL castage.com/survey and enter your feedback. Now, what this graph tells is that if somebody stayed fully invested during a crisis period, then after 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, his returns would be more compared to someone who moved into cash, which basically he everything and he was just waiting. And if he missed even 1 month or 2 months or 3 months of the recovery period, then his returns go down because none of us know that recovery will start. So there is no point in selling off now and then trying to again enter at the bottom. This is most of us could not exit when the market went down. Now, assuming that we will also know when the market will bottom and enter at the right time, it's very difficult that somebody will be correct in timing the market and he will be right twice. There have been exited in 2008, and then even at the 2009 bottom they did not invest, and then it just went up and they could not come in at all. So the idea is to stay invested and stagger the investments rather than trying to time the market. And then there's no point in selling now because all the losses, paper losses, will turn into real losses. Then and the so this was all related to the equity markets that we discussed now. Now coming to state is that there is a perception that real estate is not so risky, and there are sometimes pressure from family to get into real estate fast or at a young age. But I don't kind of agree with that philosophy. I think if the asset allocation allows someone that okay, my 25 or 20% of my assets will, up to that I can invest, then at the right time it can be done. However, if the asset says that 80-90% of my asset will be one flat, then we should not go for it because it's quite risky. And now with this prices, probably the prices will go down further, and then there might be an opportunity when it becomes an attractive asset class, and then someone can start looking at it again. Another mistake that we have commonly seen is people mixing insurance with investment. Insurance is important for risk management, confusing it with investments, and there are products like ULIP, etc., which are pushed by banks, which you should definitely avoid. The kind of insurance products that are required insurance to cover life risks, and that should be that if something goes wrong, that then your family is protected. Also, healthcare is tied to a job, though some jobs are stable, but it might be a good idea to link it and also separate health insurance policy in case you decide to go to another company, or the company starts firing people, or you want to do your own startup. There are a number of reasons why that particular healthcare policy may not be there when you need it. So it is something which should be there, and in our surveys we have seen that people in India are very inadequately insured when it comes to healthcare. So that's within that healthcare there are certain critical illnesses like cancer. Those diseases, there should be some sort of insurance that you take. So problem, though it's low probability and hopefully it doesn't happen, but in case it does, then there should be some sort of a risk management that you put in place. Otherwise, we have seen some neighbors or uncles coming and emotionally selling a policy, or some bank RM trying to push a some sort of a ULIP. Those are things which you should definitely avoid. John Kenneth was a leading economist in the 1950s, and he had there are two classes of forecasters: those who don't know, and they don't know. Basically, what he was that nobody really knows when the market is going to go up or when the market is going to go down, which is the truth. And hence, what we do is not really time the market that exactly, but there are certain relative valuation parameters. There are certain parameters to know that, okay, if the market is relatively high or relatively low, and then you can decide the asset allocation and invest in a staggered fashion. But exact timing and somebody just coming and saying that this is what is going to happen, he may be very confident, but nobody really knows. So with that, the point is that don't rely too much on TV or some analyst saying something, because most of the time I have personally seen that whatever people are saying on TV shows and all, either it doesn't work, or I mean it's not the I mean it is not always the truth. There are like, for example, everybody had a different vision 2020. I have not seen any vision 2020 where we would be locked down in our houses for 1 month. And hence, whatever you decide should be your own analysis, your own decisions based on your own fact finding, where you challenge the decisions, statements which somebody is making, and you have to question certain assumptions and then decide. Often it goes contra also, like when people are very bullish and everybody is buying, that is the time probably we should be more careful. And when people are really depressed and they are not, nobody is interested to buy something, that's the time to actually look at it and see if there is real value in it. And the aspect that we have always seen is that financial decisions are driven more by emotions than by actual calculations, and that's for the majority of people. There are gimmicks that keep in sales strategies, and for even for these online apps and in the malls, etc., where they will mark up a price, then put a discount, and then say, now there is a discount, so you keep buying. Things that should be avoided. And another aspect is that when people are buying a mobile phone, they spend hours trying to understand each and every feature of the phone. They compare it with different phones. It takes number of hours to basically decide which is the right phone to buy. Similarly, when they buy either a mutual fund or an insurance product, it takes, they just something, there is a 5-star, 4-star, some sort of rating, or some friend has advised. And typically, product should take more time than a mobile phone, or even people are spending more time in getting a airline ticket discount coupon. That also we have seen that people more time searching that, which might save 400-500 versus some decision which will have impact in lakhs or crores, that is being given less time. And there are two types of biases. One is an emotional internal bias, can be from family or culture. Maybe there's a family which is very conservative, so everything will go into a fixed kind of an asset class, versus somebody else who might be from a business family trying to take more risk. And there are other issues which are related to analytical and data processing errors. So both these things happen. Even in mutual funds, we have seen that whenever somebody is bringing a fact sheet and showing us the returns, they will probably try to show us those schemes which have done well in that period. But there is a lot of survivorship bias. Many schemes which have closed down over a period of they will show you their return. So there's some manipulation, as well as there are some emotional biases which prevent us from taking the. How can you either remove or reduce some of these behavioral biases? Is to how do you come to know that what are your own biases? So try to think about it, like what could be hindering your uh, financial analysis. Is there an emotional aspect that is kind of the assumptions, and challenge any perceptions that are there, and avoid any anchoring, be prepared to adjust reference points. So entrenched perception was that real estate had no risk, or it was always going to go up in Mumbai, but those perceptions have now been challenged, and data proves that those perceptions were not right. Also try to get views from someone who is actually not you think, but challenging what you think. That way, if it is a logical discussion, then you can see the other person's point of view. And many times, whatever happened in last 6 months or 1 year is what we follow, but that recency effect kind of clouds our logical. And whenever a new news is there, it may already be factored in so then that will not have further effect. And so we have to think outside the box and be open to conflicting views. The other solution is, so if you are doing it all yourself, then obviously that's good. Otherwise, you try to select the right financial partner. What from experience is that bank relationship managers or insurance, they are not really investment partners. They're more in the, from a sales point of view, they have certain targets that they have to meet. Even most of our parents investment advisors, they obviously think about us, but in that they will give the right advice. And especially with youngsters and millennials, seen that a lot of these direct apps have come up where people can just download within a few minutes, everything is ready, and they can go to Quora, do some search result, and invest something. That's also not the right strategy. It doesn't work, and now we are seeing how people have lost a lot of money, and it will take years to recover. So it's better to work with the right financial partner. And the problem here is that good quality investment advice is limited and costly, and obviously sales pitch is not equal to advice. And we need someone who will our emotions help in that behavioral aspect, because that will determine a large portion of investment return. And just behavior at a scale is very challenging. So here, to be a successful investor, we have to keep learning, we have to keep seeing what are the new opportunities in the market. And as Henry Ford has said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. The greatest thing in life is to keep your mind young. So just people who are just starting out, and especially youngsters, try to break the total amount of money that you have in three buckets. One is how much you will need in the next 2 years This is something which can be for for any emergency. It can be even for a healthcare requirement, or in case you are looking to change something new. This is something which you don't put in share market, liquid fund, or which are like typically considered relatively safe. Just keep your money there so that you can withdraw the money anytime. If whatever excess you have, which can be there for 2 to 5 years, it can be in a debt fund or a balance fund, depends on your risk profile. And in equity fund, now with the market correction, gold is picking up, so that also can have some allocation. So you can decide how much in each bucket you can. Is very personal. Everybody will have a different number, but it's a framework on how much money I can put in each bucket. So, like personally, I had some money in equity fund, but whenever I put some money in equity fund, my idea is that I will not need or touch that money for 10 years. So even if market goes down another 20%, I will not sell. Probably I'll buy more. But if I put something which I will need in next 2 years, then there might be a situation where I have to sell at a loss. So this bucket strategy helps to manage the cash flows much better. Yeah, so like a balance fund or a hybrid fund is kind of for the intermediate period. These are like very basic for someone who's just getting started. Stay asset light and avoid debt or loans, especially personal loans, credit card debt. These are the things which must be avoided because it's a very high cost debt. And nowadays, with there are options that you don't need to purchase something. You can rent something, and that way you don't purchase the asset. So that means you will have less loans. You have to understand the power of compounding. For trial purposes, you can start a small amount of money. It need not be a large amount to start investments. Like most of the apps, including ours, has just like anybody can start with just 500 rupee also, just to things work. You have to be aware of your own biases, question assumptions, and think outside the box, accept conflicting views. Wherever possible, and especially in this kind of a scenario, you should delay avoidable purchases, instant gratifications. Many marketing emails and push notifications keep coming, but to avoid instant purchases. Wherever possible, take the help of experienced investment professional, and minimize your visit to banks, because whenever I'm going to a bank, they're trying to sell me something which I don't need, and it's generally not good for my money. Just this is my team. Like I did my MBA from Boston University. I'm a CFA charter holder, and I was managing around 2 billion of investments at Tata Steel. And my colleague Hiren, who was working with JP Morgan AMC, and we have some advisors who are in the machine learning and behavioral science field. And in our cash recharge, we basically filter out investment options, do our own financial research. We have a recommendation engine which tells where to invest and when to buy, sell, etc. And all the transactions are digital. And we also monitor user portfolio. And with that, thank you for your time, and we can take some questions. And if you still want to, submit your, you can go to the link which I have shared.
Sure. Sure. Thank you so much, Saugata, for taking us through the presentation. We will now go through the questions that have been posted. There are a couple of them that we've already received as a part of the session, and I'm sure more will come in. So let's take the first question. It says, is it a good time to invest in cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin? Also, which is the platform where we can buy a Bitcoin?
So I'm the wrong person to give advice on Bitcoin. The problem with Bitcoin is that though there is a theory that it has some value because it's the number of Bitcoins is limited to, I think, 21 million or something. But we really don't know what is the true or intrinsic value of. There is no cash flow which I can see directly, and because I don't know the intrinsic value, so I cannot really invest with a company like a share of a company or with a bond, there is a clear understanding of where the cash flows are coming from. So if a has a, they will have a particular revenue, they'll have profit. With this profit, we can do a valuation and try to find what should be the price of a share. Similarly, with a bond, we know what is the interest coupon in that bond and will be repaid. We can do a valuation. With Bitcoin, etc., there is no such thing. It's completely speculative right now. And earlier, it was told to us that Bitcoin will have a negative correlation with market when crisis happens, and maybe the share market will, but Bitcoin will go. Nothing like that has happened this time. Or everything is down. So I don't really see any particular benefit because even the correlation side is not working. So I cannot actually recommend that.
Sure. How frequently should one revisit the portfolio?
So quarterly, people should check that everything is going on as per the schedule, and there is something called rebalancing that they can do once a year. Rebalancing means that suppose my portfolio should be 60% in fixed and 40% in share market. Some events might take place where this ratio has now got skewed. Now maybe I am 70% in share market and only 30% in fixed. So if some because of market movement, my initial investment portfolio after it on a percentage terms. So it might be a good idea to revisit at that time and rebalance, in the sense sell something, buy something, buy the other, and bring the percentages to the same level I am comfortable with. And also there is also a continuous now that first problem in this market has happened, which is the share market has gone down, and also the first leg of this correction is done. That is only the first order effect. The second order will be that a lot of jobs will be lost and a lot of people will be unemployed after some time. Now, with after this second order effect, the third order effect is that people will be defaulting on their loans. Also, there will be some companies cash flows to service their corporate debt. That might lead to sudden credit events or bankruptcies. So, situation, even for debt funds as well as equity funds, we must be careful. There must be yourself, or you have someone who's taking care of a portfolio, who's also looking at all the underlying securities that you have invested in. Because in mutual funds also, they might be investing in 20 to 50 other companies, and some problem might happen in the near future. So whenever a problem is detected, if it requires us to exit from that scheme, then that decision must be taken quickly, because these things can happen. Also, whenever crises like these happen, then after 2, 3, 6 months, there are other news items will come which will surprise us. There will be some very strong company which we probably never thought will get into a problem, might get into a problem, and those surprises will also affect our portfolio. Also, during other previous such crises that we have seen, like I was in 2000, I was actually in Boston and in the New York area, so I've seen how that panned out. And what used to happen was many people are somehow managing a fraud business by juggling some numbers or taking loans and rolling it over, etc. And when and crisis happens, then these frauds are not able to continue, and that's where stories will emerge. So we have to be careful about it.
Sure, sure. So, Saugata, the next question is, what's the best way to select a mutual fund? And ideally, mutual fund ratings are reliable. However, I think there was some reference to this in the conversation. So, if you could just share some light on this.
Yeah, so we don't rely on the mutual fund ratings. The reason is that there are 6+ funds, and these ratings are done sometimes just once a year or maybe twice a year. And mutual fund portfolios keep changing very frequently, like every month end we get the debt portfolio, even equity funds, people are buying and selling constantly. So if I rely on a rating which was given in, say, September 2019, and just because the website, I have opened that website page today and I'm seeing that today that fund is have been in September 2019. So so we are doing our own independent research in house, and as far as our strategy goes, we do most of the 6,000 we will exclude. Some schemes we will keep, and we will keep monitoring those 25-30 schemes ourselves, because that has to be done at a very high frequency.
Okay. So, how does one take minimum risk and ensure that there are safe returns in terms of comparison of fixed deposit, mutual funds, shares, futures? Is there any tool that is readily available for such analysis?
See, the taking ability will be an individual's decision. So there are two aspects that the person himself or herself needs to decide, which is ability to take risk and willingness to take risk. So, I mean, what is your total ability to take risk? Suppose you have a total, investment portfolio of 1 crore, and you think, okay, 25 lakhs is what I can play with. That's the risky part of my portfolio. Then out of that 25, you can decide how much will go in mutual funds, shares, and other things. So it depends on what is your ability to take risk. Willingness to take risk, that's actually a behavioral trait. Some people, they will not have a peaceful sleep. Right? I have some investors clients who are right now feeling very angry because the markets are down. But there are some clients who are very, who don't bother. They're like, okay, it will come up after some time. And there are some who are more aggressive. They're saying, when can I invest more now? So it is a very individual kind of a decision, that how much max I can put at risk and still have a very peaceful sleep. So it can be 20% or 40 or 60, depending on the person. But there is nothing called absolute risk free kind of a situation. Even you have to take consider the inflation risk. So even putting 100% in FD is not risk free. You are losing from inflation.
Right. The next question is, what should be the right asset allocation percentage instrument wise for young people and for people of 60 and above?
Though there are some formula like 100 minus age should be in upper asset class, like, but don't actually go with that. It again comes back to the last answer which I gave, which is your personal situation. There are people at the age 60 or 65 who have a pension which is sufficient to cover their life needs, and they have a house, so they don't have to pay any rent, and they have a insurance, health insurance, which covers their health care. So they can actually put maybe 50-60% of their pension money also in equity, because that's surplus for them and they don't need the money. They already have enough in other fixed deposit and other things. So but there are some youngsters which like there are some even in my team who are living credit card to credit card. Like one credit card bill comes, their salary gets offset, then again credit card starts. They should not invest in equity at all. First you have to save, build some sort of a base, and it has to go back to that the three buckets which I showed. The 2 year savings, which is liquid, you can access anytime, doesn't affect, that 2 year of cash flow ensures that you can actually take some risk. Otherwise, there is no point in taking it and then selling it at a loss.
Right. I think there's request to go back to that slide. Actually, Saugata, if you could put that slide back where it shows the less than 2 years, 2 to 5, and then 5 and above. I think a couple of people have put in request to see that slide again.
Sure.
Right. The next question is it a good time to go for a voluntary PF over and above what the employer contributes?
Yeah, so that is fine. I mean, people can put in a little bit more money in PF. That will obviously be good for the long term. And if they have some surplus, they can put in PF, no problem.
Okay. Do you think it's the right time now to invest, or shall we wait for the prices to fall further?
So if we see the valuation, parameter, currently the Nifty P is around 18, and which is a decent level to start. However, in the last financial crisis in 2008-9, the Nifty P had gone down to up to 12. So even if somebody starts investing now, it should be in a staggered manner, not everything today. It can be in a staggered manner, like in either like an STP or a SIP, where every month they can invest, and maybe there's another slightly dynamic way of doing that, where more the market falls, amount of investment goes up. So suppose somebody has 20 lakhs to invest, and they divide it into 5 parts of 4 lakh each, and they decide that, okay, at this valuation range I will put 4, again at this valuation I might put a little bit more. So it has to be planned in a staggered way, not everything just now, but yeah, people can and start executing from now in gradually.
Okay. How much percentage of an individual's monthly income should be invested in the 2-year bucket, and so on and so forth, referring to the same slide that's up right now?
Okay.
What
So
percentages should one split?
In the 2-year bucket, if somebody can fill it sooner, it will be good. So once, suppose the 2-year bucket for someone is say 5 lakh rupees, or depends on their lifestyle and how much they need to keep. So they can start putting maximum in that 2-year bucket initially and fill that, and then in the other. So maybe 50-60% is in the 2 initially. Once that has been filled, then that percentage will go.
Okay. So there was a M6 crisis earlier, and do you advise that one should invest in commodities?
In commodities, different types of commodities. So it can be, oil, gold, etc. So every commodity will have a different type of a cycle. So that's like a slightly more complicated question, because every commodity will not behave the same way. We'll have to see one, and it's actually more high risk and then just going for the traditional debt and equity funds.
Right. Is it a good time to invest in blue chip stocks or mid and small cap?
So of crisis happens, then when the recovery starts, it will probably start with the blue chip companies only, and then further mid cap and small cap. So better to stick with the blue chip ones.
Okay. What is the immediate option available for investment right now other than stocks or mutual fund? And even the interest rates for PF are also going down. Which one would you suggest?
So it first, people will have to go back to this asset allocation slide uh, and see where they are currently, and then they have to decide like how much they want to reach. So suppose somebody has too much amount in fixed deposit, say 80% in fixed deposit, then for that person he can start deploying in equity. On the other hand, if somebody has a lot more in another asset class, so they can rebalance accordingly. So it will depend on the asset allocation that they are comfortable with, and then start investing. But definitely equity should be a portion in their next investment plan, because it's
Right.
already lower level, so some amount should go.
Okay. Which sector would you prefer for a long-term investment?
uh,
I think the
so
word should be recommended.
so though some sectors have seen problem, like IT and pharma. So those are sectors which have seen less of a problem. So they can like people can bank on that part, and rest they can go for a diversified fund so that they get access to all the sectors. But as such, sector-wise, IT and pharma are pretty reasonably well even in that.
Okay. What's your view on how long will it take for the markets to recover from here?
See, exactly, obviously nobody knows, but it will also it will actually depend on how the virus is. So now that's the important variable. Given what is going on in US and Europe, it still might take end of July, August before things are things clear out. So after that only people will focus on the economy. So it's a long way from now.
Okay. How to select? So this is a little detailed question. How does one select the class of investment like an equity, FD, gold, etc. if one has to shift? Like for example, if we think that equity market is at peak right now and is the right time to exit, then what should be the next investment option and how does one select that?
So I think there was one slide which had this cycle, and this cycle is for almost all the variable classes like equity, etc. So if somebody believes that the prices are already quite high, just maybe if you go to if you go and check the PE and PB, etc. of Nifty, even before the virus came in, the markets were at a relatively higher valuation. There were times when the PE was 28. So the model that we are using, which is called the dynamic SIP model, there it takes certain some of these valuation parameters into consideration, and then comes up with a score which says that okay, now the market is relatively high, so we should not put in share market. We should put it in fixed kind of a instrument. And so at in the month of January 2019, that number was around 10 to 20%. So only 10 to 20% of the money was going in share market and rest was fixed. Now that a number of 7 to 7,000 I can put in for this month's investment. I can put in the share market, and 3,000 will fixed. So it is driven by those valuation parameters.
Okay. Can you please share some insight on and comparison on direct versus indirect funds in the long term?
So the mutual fund expenses probably. So what happens is that after SEBI has made certain changes, the difference is probably 5% on an average basis, and that may not factor to be considered, because there also we see a graph like when in the market material of those products, the graph of this kind of an exponential kind of thing is shown, where there is this sort of a cost saving and all. But there is an assumption in that. The assumption is that my returns are going to be same. If my returns are same and there is a cost saving, then obviously it makes sense to not take help and do it yourself. But if you think that the returns are not going to, then that cost factor, because somebody might try to save 0.5%, but if he loses minus 20%, then that cost saving is not going to work out. And also the graph in that case assumes a constant return. If you see the star market, it will be a constant return of 15% per annum in equities. I have not seen any 2 or 3 year period in Indian market where it has constantly given 15, 15, 15. Not even 3 years, and those graphs are for 25 years. It doesn't work that way because of the volatility in the market, and because of the ups and downs which will happen, which will also need some sort of a emotional handholding. uh, so what I suggest is that you have to see the cost benefit. The cost is there, but if you're getting some advisor or somebody who's helping you to get a better outcome, then that is more important.
Right. Is the financial sector too risky to invest for now, even if it means that I want to invest for averaging the price?
I think it's already gone down a lot, and there are some good solid companies which have good amount of cash on their balance sheet and their NPA levels are low, etc. So if you can analyze those companies, then you can invest. But because now the moratorium period on loans, and after that we don't know if the lockdown will get extended and how that will affect their NPAs, etc. So if there is a company that already has high NPA and then it might further deteriorate, then you can avoid those. But wherever you see that the balance sheet is and these are very well-known names, well-managed companies, and are available at a very good discount, then you can invest. But it has to be done through that analysis, how that company has been managed.
Okay. What's your view on investment in sovereign gold bonds?
Yeah, those are good. I mean, if there is somebody, again, it comes to this asset allocation part. If suppose 5 to 10% of my asset allocation will be in gold, if that is what I have decided, and if I have to deploy some amount, then either I can use a gold fund or the sovereign gold bonds. Both are good. With the sovereign gold fund, there is also a small amount of interest. So, it's a good option if for my gold related allocation.
Right. Should one use their savings to pay home loan instead of investing in such a volatile market, or investing in FD having lower returns?
No, instead of FD, you can definitely pay back the loan because hardly, FD returns are going to be 5.5%, and the loan is at 8.5 or something. You can repay, but in the equity market side, it will depend on how long term you are thinking. Because if the home loan is at 8.5 or in that range, and you are in the 30% tax bracket, then your net and the interest levels are around 2 lakh rupees, then you can continue the loan also for some more time and invest in another asset class. But if your loan amount is interest amount is more than 2 lakhs, then you can pay off up to that point, so that your interests are not more than 2 lakhs, because up to 2 lakhs you get the tax benefit also.
Right. Someone wants to know, is it a good thing to start investing today, considering there is no investment that the individual has made so far as a pure, fresh individual? How does one take that ahead?
Yeah, even somebody who's just starting should invest in both fixed and equity. Even it's not though the markets are lower, need not put 100% in share market only right now. They can do an asset allocation and put whatever they are comfortable with in share market, and rest in a fixed kind of a portfolio right now.
Okay, last couple of questions, Saugata. I know we have been going at a very fast pace. Last couple of them before we conclude the call. How should a retired person look at invest his retirement corpus in order to get steady income or quarterly or half-yearly returns? You want me to read the question again? Yeah, sure. I will do that. How should a retired person invest his or her retirement corpus in order to get steady income, which could be quarterly or half-yearly or annual?
Okay. So, depending on what is his cash flow need, we'll have to do a little bit of back calculation and see that how much should be that investment, income that is required. And there can be three ways that there will be that investment income. One would be interest that he or she gets from FDs, or even from fixed funds, like debt funds. What could be the fixed kind of a. Then there can be dividend income. So if there are certain high dividend stocks that the person has invested, in fact now a lot of good companies which keep giving out dividends on an annual basis are available at a lower price. So the dividend yield, which is dividend divided by the price of that stock, is quite attractive. And if the prices go down further, it will become even more attractive. So that could be second source of cash flow. In case that person also has a second home or something, then there can be rental income. And apart from that, on the equity side, the planning probably should have started earlier, where he has already created a portfolio of equity funds, and now there would be a SWP, which is a systematic withdrawal plan, through which, in a tax efficient manner, another cash flow can be created.
Okay, I think we'll take the last two questions. Since the market is going down, how long should an individual wait to invest in real estate?
Real estate, you should just wait till the point where you find a very desperate seller. There will be people who will like to sell and get liquidity because of their, because of some emergency that they'll have, and those are going to be real bargains. Even some developers will be in a very tough situation currently, and if there are deals which are really great, I mean, you can calculate the rental yield will be how much rent you will get from that property, net of all the costs like maintenance, property tax, etc., divide by the price that you're paying for that asset. Normally, in the crisis, it used to be only 1 or 2%. If there are now opportunities where you can get 5-6% rental yield, then you should definitely look at it.
Sure. What are your views on hedging, and what are the instruments one should use to hedge?
So normally, for investors, like retail investors like us, one option that can be protective put or just a put option. So sometimes when we feel that markets are very high, and there is a chance that markets may correct or go down, at that time, uh, because selling these long-term equity funds, everything is not so easy. You may think market will go down, but market doesn't go down; it keeps going up. So that is one option, which can happen. And second thing is, if you sell, there are sometimes exit load, sometimes capital gains tax, etc. So it's not always so easy to sell. So then, to hedge, if there is a put option, and some of the put options which are out of the money, which is basically these are typically lower cost and out of the money put option. And if market goes down, it went down this time 30% kind of, these put options very well. So that kind of hedges the risk. It's like an insurance on your portfolio.
Right. We'll take last two questions. One of which is, for people who are staying abroad, is this the right time to transfer currency back to India, taking advantage of the forex rate?
Yeah, I think they should also keep remitting in a staggered fashion, and over the next 5-6 months, they'll get a good remittance related rate. So USD INR is already high, so it's good. They can start that.
Right. I think the last question that we'll take, because we're already beyond our schedule. Should an individual, considering the current scenario, should an individual extend and top up their medical health insurance schemes?
Yes. So they need to calculate like the total amount of health insurance that they need for themselves and their family, and then also factor in inflation, because maybe today it's fine, but and also read important terms and conditions like how much daily room rental is allowed, etc. So those things can be calculated, and if required, that health insurance amount can be increased. And there's another way of increasing the health insurance amount without paying too much of premium. It's called a super top up scheme. So you can probably look that up, super top up, and that way you can get higher health insurance but pay a lesser premium.
Okay. One last question. Sorry for stretching the time, Saugata. I think we'll take one last question. Are derivatives a good option to invest, in your opinion?
Can you please repeat?
Are derivatives a good investment option, as per your opinion?
No. See, derivative, they are like a lottery ticket. So derivatives can be used for hedging purposes if there is a need, but derivatives are not typically considered investments. They are more for a trading thing, and trading is based on more luck than skill most of the time.
Right. I think there are few more questions, and for everyone whose questions haven't, been responded to, I will request you to please write back to either me, that is Sweetie Bantia, or Caroline Jacob. you could also write back on the in wellness mailbox from where you will receive the calendar invite. We are already over the time. I would like to thank Saugata for taking time out and doing a fantastic session with us. Thank you for being patient and answering all our queries. Really appreciate Saugata and look forward to connecting.
Sure. Thanks a lot. And it was really great interacting with you. Thanks a lot.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining the call. We will conclude the session and you can write back to us in case of any queries. We will be sharing the session recording, which will include the presentation as well. So do visit it again in case you have any doubts, and definitely, pass on the word to your colleagues who were not able to join the call, and do share this information with them. Look forward to you folks joining the other calls, which are going to be happening tomorrow onwards through the entire week. And thank you so much. Stay safe. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Swagata, I think if you are the one recording the session, could you pause the recording?